Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Kubal. Today I have me two very special guests, Trevor Jones and April Raine. How are you both doing today?
Hello.
Hello, doing great.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no, I it was like really deep in like 2,000 emails. I might actually have to do like a separate publisher, which is great. Probably have like separate publisher email, where some different companies, indie or otherwise, can kind of filter through that way. Because I had to go through a lot of newsletter things from some different companies that they were sending me, like, "Hey, are you interested in these people?" I was like, "It sounds great," but I was like, I have quite a few people that like I already had scheduled and stuff. So I appreciate you guys being with me. My season 4 took so much longer than I thought over the summer to wrap up with work and stuff. So I'm really glad that we could get you guys on today and get you in the rotation here earlier in season 5. But yeah, we'll start right there with that first question. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
Well, thanks for asking, Daniel. I've been a writer basically since I was 10 when I discovered my mother's stenography textbook in my father's library, and it had a cardboard cutout of a typewriter. Now, this is dating myself, but that was back in the days of manual and typewriters. So I learned to type on a piece of cardboard, and when I impressed my parents with sticking with it all summer long, they got me one for Christmas, and the rest became history. I was making a family newspaper and writing my little short stories as a child. And when I got to high school, they actually had a typing class. It was the first time I ever made an A and moved up to electric typewriters. And by college, the computer and the internet was being born, and it was just transferring my stories from, tattered pieces of, you remember you had to put carbon between your paper to make copies? Yeah, to finally getting on a computer, and I've been writing ever since. And then I discovered Dungeons and Dragons in college, and my stories went from just something in my head to something I could share with people. And then eventually I wrote it down and made a book. And when April and I got together back in 2014, by 2015, I was unloading a storage locker, and what's this? I said, "Oh, it's a book I wrote." So for my birthday, she got me an editor, and it became history that I became an author, and along the way, she joined me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's super cool. Well, I got to say, D&D is definitely one of the better, in my opinion, better ways to enter the genre or just writing, because it's just natural, right? With telling stories or hearing people tell stories, right? Something that's really cool. I have my grandma's typewriter actually. It's really cool. She was an accountant. So yeah, I found hers years and years ago, and then I wasn't allowed to touch it. So she got me another one that was electric. But my dad actually recently brought my grandma's actually shortly after my son was born. They came to meet him. So yeah, I have hers. It's actually locked away very safely. But I remember like just for years, just clicking away and just telling stories on there. So that definitely resonates with me there. So that's super cool. Well, in terms of books, and we're gonna get talking about genres now. What genre or genres do you currently write in and why?
So we write in the high epic fantasy genre, sword and sorcery, a little action adventure, and some dark fantasy as well. We've got 2 series out and a third one in the works, and they're all within those genres.
Yeah, and the thing about fantasies is a very big umbrella, and underneath that, one series could be considered grimdark, another one is much more action adventure, and then another one is, well, I'm not sure how to describe that one. It's almost like a buddy comedy run into
action adventure.
Yeah, we jokingly refer to our books like if a director was making them into movies, what kind of flavor director you'd have. He's like, this one is definitely a Tim Burton series, and then this one is much more Michael Bay. Things are going to explode in this one, so we like those imaginings. So
absolutely.
Super cool. That's like I had a friend, like novella kind of popped off right off the radar once they got rid of it. But I had prepped like a series, and I had like 4 seasons, like almost 50 episodes planned. So I had like the first whole season chunk and then the second one. So then my friend was like, "What are you gonna do now?" I was like, "I don't know," because there's nothing there. So I'm like still debating, do I go put all the seasons into novellas, or just throw 3 seasons in, which is kind of like the main arc, and then just do it, like novels that way? But it's so funny you mentioned that, because we were just discussing that. My friend's like, well, how would you sell it? Because we went to a Comic-Con last Saturday in Rochester. It was awesome. There were so many great creatives there, and a bunch of different like genres and things. We had books, comics, games. People were doing all sorts of things. It was awesome. But I was like, yeah, Mission Impossible meets Lethal Weapon, in like meets Lord of the Rings, in like a Japanese fantasy setting, right? And I was like talking to a couple of people, and I was like, yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna go with. So we just happened to be talking to people. They're like, oh, that sounds really cool. So I totally get that. It's nice to be able to do that, right? Because you get that, like we talk about that on here a lot. You get that previous genre or the thoughts people have, right? And it kind of like self-advertises, right? So
Yeah.
that's super cool. Well, that's awesome. So you guys talked about, like reading a little bit, right? And some background, with fantasy. But in terms of writing, I personally find it's easier for me to write fantasy than it is my urban fantasy or sci-fi. So for you guys, like in particular, like what is it about these fantasy and its subgenres that you find really exciting to write?
Go ahead. Well, since I created the world that all these books take place in, I know it intimately. So I would write urban fantasy more if I actually had a place I lived in and was familiar with to use as a
Oh,
setting.
that's cool.
So since I created this world, I know where all the nooks and crannies are. So it's easier to put characters into it and have them explore it because I already know the world really well. And since I'm the dungeon master for the games she's played in, she's got to experience that world from a player's point of view. So her books are written in first person and they come from that point of view. And that's I think what led that.
Absolutely. So the Knights of Aragon series really allows you to explore the world of Kinther,
Mm,
and you kind of learn about the nuances of the world and the legends and all of those things. So it's very fast paced, and it really gives you a good overview of the world building of the world
cool.
of Kinther. So
Oh, that's really cool. Um, well, I think that's awesome. It's so cool that you did the world and then the game and then you got to play. I think that's really neat. My wife will not play. We had a situation where a friend of ours like left town, and I was like, if you don't join, the band is breaking up. And she was like, I just can't. So we went and found another guy. We're playing for another like 2 years and stuff. My son was born, so we kind of had to take a break. People kind of, went off and did some other stuff. So we're trying to get the band back together. And just like Kings of the Wilds, we feel like those old guys that are like trying to get back the gaming of our youth, I guess. So that's really cool that you guys were able to have that experience together and then right from there. It's really neat. So I got to get into, I love asking people about their products in particular. And we kind of guys led us, I feel like, perfectly into this segue. So we'll go with that third one. So, what are your Knights of Aragon books with April, Nia Raine about, and how did the idea for them come about?
well, they come from the game. He's very much into, when you play a game, you write track sheets. So it gives you you write down all the important monsters and the treasure you found and what you learned from the game. And I took those track sheets and I created a book series with it. And I have to tell you, it's very difficult to take games and pull out what's important and make it a story that is linear, that people are going to enjoy with an over arc. Because sometimes, in a game you've played, you have so many side quests. Well, nobody wants to read about all these different side quests. They want to know the main
Yeah, yeah.
theme of your story, the main plot. So that's been a challenge for me, but it's also been very rewarding as well to get that. It's about an elven ranger named Elwyn and her adventures in the world of Kinther. And so there's the book,
That's
and
awesome.
she her whole family's destroyed by orcs. So orcs are number one enemy, and she finds a prophecy where they're trying to bring their god back, and so hijinks ensue. So to go try to stop this prophecy that nobody seems to care about except for the Knights of Aragon. So yeah, and that's just her. We've got the third book coming out in November, and it's just the story of Elwyn and her life and her adventures.
What my favorite part of that book is? My favorite part is the fact that your character in the beginning was relatively young and inexperienced, and she took this information of this terrible things about to happen, this earth-shattering, or in this case, Kinther-shattering event is right around the corner. She takes all this information to the authorities, and the authorities are like, "Oh, the gods will take care of it. They've got it handled." And her character is like, "I'm not really in the position to trust that they're going to take care of it because you're supposed to be their agents and you're not doing anything." So she takes it upon herself to go and deal with it. And I think it's a really nice analogy for taking responsibility for bringing about the change in the world you want. I mean, that wasn't the goal when the game was being played and the story was being written. But I always find that subconsciously, we always find a mirror from our lives that end up in our fiction.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So I guess I got two sub questions from that. One, instead of an earthquake, would it be a Kintherquake?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I just really like that. This just sounds awesome. But really though, like I'm curious because you really like I think hit the nail right on the head. So like we had a campaign that we were playing with right before the pandemic. It was like weird, right? We had like a freshman in high school took over the group that we like, went to like a game store. We're like, we don't have time. And she ran the greatest dark fantasy campaign I've ever played. And we were in this like haunted woods. I had a skull that was like a northern Viking skull, who had some PTSD from like losing his like his Viking crew essentially, right? That he was like the skull of. And he has some regrets. And my friend had this awesome like dwarf character and the two of that like a rogue and the two of us just got in trouble, right? And it was super fun. But I started writing about it last or like two springs ago. So you actually I think hit the nail right in the head. I did this great world building. I got it going and then I was like it's really hard to go back from our notes and our stats and on what was going on and then to choose to write and to really figure out like you were saying like really like a really good arc. So I'm kind of curious at how you did that personally. So like, what did you keep? What did you throw away?
I threw a lot away, and they may end up being short stories later because they're really interesting and they're really fun, but they didn't move
Good
the
idea.
plot along. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, so each book has a plot, but then there's an over story arc that I keep in that as well. And I just have to sit there and go, okay, did this adventure move this plot forward that I'm working on? And so I kind of write both ways. I outline it, but I also pants it because sometimes you're like, well, that didn't. I've got to make point A and point B meet, and in the game it didn't meet, so I've got to make that meet now. So, but yeah, it's very interesting. It's probably like I'm going to start a romantasy series that probably will not be as challenging as this to write. I get to do it from scratch. So.
Yeah. Well, you made some good points there, and I think you're so right. Is like it's hard though at times, right? Because you're like you want the story to be as enjoyable as the game, right? And the experiences you had, right? But then it's hard because you don't want to make it just about those experiences because, like you said, right? Maybe it doesn't connect. But I love how you mentioned like short stories. I never thought of that because I have quite a few things that I took out of the campaign that we played that I think actually would be really cool as short stories or like really short novelettes or something like that. So
Yeah.
I'm stealing that. I'll give you credit for it later though. But yeah, that's a really, really good idea. Super cool. Well, that's awesome. I think that those books sound really cool, so I'm actually really excited. I love the cover of the first one too. I saw that, I was like, that is really, really neat. It's totally like my style of art. But yeah, book three, that's awesome. So congrats on that. That's super cool. So in terms of our next, like kind of like the next series we'll talk about, like what are your Pentakawa books about, and what can readers expect from the main characters, in terms of the journey?
Pentakawa was the first series, the first book, the one that she discovered in my storage unit. I literally started as an oral story in the 90s as part of a background story to players about the most, what do you call it when you're doing something you don't want to do? Hesitant, the most hesitant vampire in history. He was 70 years old when his family and village were taken, and he was turned into a vampire. And he was a goodly man. He was faithful. He was cut from the whitest cloth possible, and he did not want to be what he became. But once he was turned, he didn't have a choice in the matter anymore, and his nature didn't allow him to just, end it all. So he had to find a new place in the world. And where does the undead go? The hesitant undead go in a world that wants to do nothing but destroy you. So that entire series is about him trying to find a new place in the world. Where does the tiny little light go in the darkness, kind of thing. And he was 70 years old. So this is a twist on the vampire. He's not a sex symbol. He's not sparkling. He's not seducing people. He is an intellect. He is a power to be reckoned with. He had a huge skill set in his mortal life that he augments using his vampiric powers.
Oh, that's cool.
And this is him just trying to find a place in the world from one kingdom to another and getting embroiled in politics and bureaucracy. Intrigue is coming out the yin yang. And so he ends up taking up wizardry, takes up magic because he's got the time for it now.
Yeah.
And nothing says vampire like sticking your nose into an ancient tome of dust and studying by candlelight all night long. So his character originally, when the games were being played, was already thousands of years old and was a piece of history. So to me, writing this series, the Pentakawa series, is writing ancient history. In fact, it's thousands of years before the main character in the Knights of Aragon series. And there's actually a minor crossover where she encounters part of his territory. And so it's sort of like the backdrop. It's like if you got to go to the Lincoln Memorial, for example, you're like, okay, this is a guy in history. And then he walks out from behind the memorial, go, that barely looks like me. You'd be a little surprised. But Pentakawa originally had a 9-book series planned. And the more I wrote, the more places in history he's popped up. So he has a lot of cameos planned. The first 3 books were combined into an omnibus. And I see much more in his future. I've got a couple of side projects, a couple other books I got to get out first, but I'll probably return to him. He'll be my flagship, most likely.
What I really love about the books is they're all interconnected. So you'll get little Easter eggs or little hints in one book that moves over into another book, and they all kind of connect in. And so if you're reading one of the series and you liked it, there's, going to be hints in other parts of the series too. And sometimes those characters either come up by reputation or, a brief brushing across them. But it's really interesting how we've intertwined all those series together.
Or a modern a character further along in history coming across the aftermath and the results of another character's actions.
That's cool. That's super cool. I love anytime somebody can interconnect things like that. I think it's really fun for you as a writer, but also like obviously the reader, right? Because like, oh, I know that person, that kind of thing. That's what I always found fun about the Forgotten Realms books. Some of the Dragonlance books do that. The Eberron books do that quite a bit too. I think it's always fun because it's almost like you're being rewarded for having read other things, right? Like it's great to finish a book, but then and some of those characters, right, you don't want to see end. So I always love when people, particularly if it's like a trilogy, right, that they actually, with that series, that they end up using that character in some way in another one, because you just want to, especially if you like that character, right, or even if you dislike them, right, they can help further the plot of another book. So I think that's super, super cool. I got to ask though, because I had this great idea of a vampire, and he's going to be bloodthirsty. And he keeps picking new assistants, right? Like his assistants keep dying. But then like this will be years from now, right? So no one's gonna remember this unless they watch this episode right before the release. But like it's essentially gonna be like you think he's a bloodthirsty vampire, but then he's gonna kill his next assistant, and you're seeing it through like the beginning of the book with his assistant's eyes, who's just picked, and he like thinks he's gonna die, and then the vampire lord kills him, right? But fakes it, and it turns out he's like a real softie. Uh, so I always thought it was interesting to like how are you gonna take the vampire, myth and lore, but then make it unique, and it's like my werewolves are way different than what people have gotten, but it makes sense, right? Because I'm a historian, like seeing where those things started and how rumors spread and things like that. So I'm curious at how you guys decided on, because when I read the description, like the blurb, I was like, this sounds like such a cool vampire and character. So I'm kind of curious at how you guys decided to like choose to make this character. Like, how did you pick different ways to make this type of vampire or this character unique? In terms of maybe like the vampires that have come before.
That's a great question because it's been my experience in reading that everybody does have a nice little twist and difference on
Yeah.
their vampires. And I'd read a lot growing up. And I'm not going to say I stole, but I was definitely inspired and influenced by all of them. Two aspects that really make my vampire, I think, a little more unique is one characteristic a lot do, and that's called blood memories. So when a vampire in my world feeds on a mortal, they get the memories of that person. And the more they drink, the more of their life they learn the memories of. So if they take a sip, it's probably a sip. If they take a little drink, it's the surface memories of what they are experiencing right this second, maybe even a few minutes prior to meeting you. So those vampires that enjoy fear will terrify their victim and then get to drink that fear in, literally.
Yeah.
But the more you drink of them, the more of their life you experience. So if you drink someone to death, literally all the way to death's doorway, you literally get their entire life. And when you're done, it doesn't stick with you like a video or you're not a carbon copy of them, but you've really gotten to know them. So in my mind, it made logical sense that vampires are heavily influenced by their diet, just like humans are. So when Penta was trying to grapple with what he had become, he started out, okay, I'll just eat animals. Well, the problem with eating just animals is they're not conscious, and he started to pick up their feral nature, and he realized he was losing his humanity to drinking only animal blood. So if he fed on predators, he became more predatory. If he fed on domestic herbivores, he became more prey, and he realized it was heavily affecting him. And the first time he literally accidentally feeds on a human being, he suddenly gets a lot of his humanity back, and now he's feeling guilt. And so he's like, okay, I'll just feed on bad people. But he feels suddenly now he's becoming a bad person. He's losing his morality. So this entire series is about him trying to balance what he must be by what he could be.
I think first of all, that just sounds like awesome and a very unique idea. But I love that theme though. That's what really drew me, in there because that's like I have a couple characters that are like that, right? Like they are a certain way, but they're trying to, whether you want to say rise above it or fight against their nature. I always think I teach history, right? So it's always such an interesting thing. I have kids ask me all the time, if we've already known that this doesn't work or treating each other this way is not smart or leads to bad things, why do we do it? I'm like, I don't know. It's a great question, right? So I think it's like there's just certain good themes, and I think that is always a really good one, right? Like man versus nature, man versus self, right? But I always find it interesting because I was listening to a podcast where somebody was like, well, what if man's nature changed and then they had to deal with that? So that's exactly what when I was reading the description made me think of that particular episode that I was listening to a couple years ago, which makes total sense, right? Because I think that makes a great story because it makes a great character, right? So that sounds really, really cool. I just want to kind of combine this subset question for both of you for like both of the series we talked about so far. In terms of characters, like what were you both thinking in terms of your main characters? Like, so they sound pretty different. So I'm kind of curious at like where you guys kind of started from with those characters and why you decided to focus on, certain things with them.
So Ellen has a lot of my traits. She's impatient. She's, a little reckless. And one of the really nice things that I was able to do through the series is a lot of character development and growth with her. Because, she starts off as a young elf, and by the end of the series, she's more mature and has been through a lot. So, but yeah, and that was just a character that I rolled up to play in the game, and she just
Cool.
became super interesting to me. Most of the characters in the book are built off of other people that have played in the game too. There's a couple
Oh, cool.
characters that I played myself. So yeah, and it just kind of, I feel like the characters I play are different aspects of who I am.
Mm.
And that was very interesting to play out for me.
Yeah. That's super cool.
When I was in college, I was taking a psych course, and I actually turned in a paper on the psychology of Dungeons and Dragons.
Awesome.
I would sort of analyze my players, and you'd see that spectrum of, I'm going to play a character that's basically me, but empowered. I'm going to play a character that is what I would like to be, but because of society rules, I'm not allowed to be. I want to play a character completely opposite me to give me that freedom of not being restricted. And then I've seen people who have played a character who didn't put a single bit of thought into it. They're just like, this sounds like fun. I like blowing stuff up. I'm not allowed to blow stuff up during the day, so I'm just going to blow it up in the game. And then very quickly you find their subconscious takes over, and what started out as a surface trait suddenly reveals something else about their character. And I've always found that fascinating.
He uses us all as social experiments.
It's the only legal way to do it is tabletop
Right?
gaming.
In some cases, they pay me to do it, so that's even better.
Yeah. That's really funny. We were just talking about one of our old gaming friends that moved in. Barry, if you're listening, great characters. This guy came up with the most unique characters. I'm like, why don't you? I'm like, come on through a book with me. I'm like, you come up with the characters, right, with the concepts, and then I'll take it from there, right? Just the coolest thing. And yeah, he had like a really interesting Kung Fu Panda like monk, but there were like other stipulations that were he had that were interesting. You're like, that would never happen to Poe in Kung Fu Panda. And then one of our other friends had like it was so interesting. It was like a Warforged cleric essentially is what it is in like 5e. And it was just so interesting. And like literally he had it where he had like an oven on his like stomach, and we could like make like mini burgers and stuff. But like it was so interesting how these guys came up with different characters, and yeah. So I could totally see that because I'm always like, how do you do this? I'm like, I've been doing it for a long time, playing the game, writing and stuff. And I'm like, these two guys would just come up with the most unique characters in D&D I've ever heard of. That I'd never like. You couldn't pay me $1 million to match what they did, right? So I totally get that. And I always think of like, what's behind it, like how are they able to do this? So, and that because it's a skill I want to have, right, to create really unique characters. Yeah, so it was really fun. But what you said though too about like being able to incorporate those. I didn't think about that. I had my character, my friend's character, but I actually didn't have anybody else from our campaign in my book or like the general like arc. So you're having me rethink that now because I feel like because they had some good ones, right? So that's a really, really great idea. So I'm gonna steal that one. I'll give you credit again there. But don't worry, April. We'll just tag it. But yeah, I think that's just a really, really great idea. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Maybe it's because I'm like a tired dad or something. I don't know. I'm just gonna blame that. But that's super cool. Well, I like how you both kind of approach characterization, from like kind of like your vantage points. I think that's really cool. And I like that it goes like deeper than just, just being a player or being a DM, that you guys are like taking those skills and like going deeper. People always ask me about that. I'm like, I don't know, I just kind of do the thing right as a storyteller. So I think it's good for people to see different perspectives, how people are able to do those kind of things. Maybe it's the teacher in me. I don't know, but I think that's really cool. So I'm going to ask question 5, and then I'm going to ask a subset question about each of like the 3 series that we've talked about so far, if that works for you guys. Because I have some subset questions I think will make more sense after that one. So what are your Tales of Kinther books about, and what can readers expect in terms of the world building?
Tales of Kinther's not full-fledged books. They're short stories that I've put
Oh,
out.
even better.
Many of them were already mostly finished short stories before I became published. And one of the things about being a self-published author is the more links there are between your name on the internet, the more likely you are to get noticed, the more likely you are to move things. So I started farming all my flavor text and adventures that I've played, or flavor text histories. And I discovered that I had been piecemealing, I call them Tales of Kinther. They're everything from legends to fables to fairy tales, all of them with a little bit of a different flavor. So I hopped into my software and slapped some covers together and edited them up and threw them out there. And each one sort of gives another little piece of history or a demonstration or an exploration of some aspect. Should I just go ahead and go into the titles?
Yeah, go right ahead.
One of my oldest was Gift of Steel, which told the story of how Thor, the god of justice and the sword, gave steel to humanity. So in Kinther, in a world of magic and gods that actually had walked the world before, man had never discovered the secrets of steel on his own. He saw how human. Oh, and this is another thing. In my world, no deity takes credit for humans. All the other species and races and creatures that walk the world of Kinther, there's a deity that'll take credit for. I made that, I created that, or I took somebody else's something and I bastardized it and it became that. But everybody like turns around, they're like, what's that? And like, they're called humans. Where do they come from? No one will take credit for humans. And that mythology will stay a mystery in my world right up until the end. But all of them have used humans as sort of like backdrops for doing stuff. And one day, Cry looked out and saw humans fighting goblins and realized these humans, they have no claws, they don't have sharp teeth, their skin is really thin. They had to wear furs so they don't freeze to death, or they don't carry water around on their back like a camel, so they have to like they're really not the best creatures. And this one's suffering really bad, but then one displays bravery and honor in protecting another human, and that really sparks something in Krar. So he gifts him the sword, and then that's how humanity got the sword. It was a gift from on high, and that starts the first cult and the first religion. And the secrets of steel are revealed to that character. So that's a huge piece of fable for the beginning of the world, and that became that short story. And then each time I wrote another tale of origin, it became another short story. So once there's enough of them, they'll end up in an anthology or maybe a couple of anthologies as they become thematic. But yeah, so the Tales of Kinther will continue to flesh out the world without the need for a long drawn out story arc and character development. Although that's not to say one might not, if interested enough reviews and readers cry out a desire. Guys, give feedback. Reviews are great. If there is such, that could develop into another book or a series. But yeah, the Tales of Kinther are just that. They're tales, legends, myths, and fables.
And sometimes it's really interesting because he'll pop one of those out and I'll be like, wait, is that why this happened in the game? And is that why my character did that? And he'll be like, yeah. I'm like, so sometimes I get behind the scenes stories when he pops one of those out that I didn't know before. So
yeah, once she joined me in the writing process, she got to see behind the DM shield for a lot of stuff. And she's still getting surprised and she's still getting confused because she only had player knowledge. And now once you get to see the writer's origin and everything, and a lot of people don't realize for a writer to put something on page, almost 10 times that amount of information was conceived of that never made it onto the page because it didn't move, like she said, it didn't move the story along, but it was necessary for the writer to come up with the story.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense. Well, I got to ask this question now. So in terms of world building, so what do you guys find that you like in terms of similarities between, the different series and tales, or like what are some things maybe that you do all the time? Like how do you guys go about world building for these different series? Start in the same place, go somewhere different depending on which one.
Every story is written differently.
Every story's written differently, and it's written in a different part of Kinther.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
cool.
even a trilogy of books that are following a main character or or characters, they move around. The every story is a world building story. I know a lot of people like to read a story that takes place like urban fantasy. All right, it's going to take place in
Chicago.
Chicago. This story is going to be in Chicago and it's going to stay in Chicago. The world building might be about the characters that are in Chicago, but Chicago is there. Chicago is built, and that's all there is to that. We tend to keep our characters relatively mobile, even if they're still for one book, they're going to move again. So that's a similarity.
Before we came on the show, we were talking about what part of Kinther hasn't really been explored by our characters, and it's the southern continent. And we were talking about what's down there and why it hasn't been explored. And so, yeah, there's a whole southern continent of Kinther that's not even been
That's cool.
put into our stories, really. So,
I mean, it's a planet. I literally sat down with an Earth globe, painted it white, and then painted Kinther onto it. So I've conceived of the entire planet, mapped out most of it.
Yeah.
The characters in the Knights of Aragon series are in the year 10,100 and something.
10,095.
10,095.
Yep. 0.
And it's SB since the beginning, because the gods tell their clerics when the world started, and we've been counting since. So I've got 10,000 years of history behind it and more to come, and lots more left to explore.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Yeah, like the TV show Supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just talked to so many people recently who are like, I love that they traveled around. So I'm rolling the dice for my urban fantasy series with my character because he's gonna be traveling around monster hunting instead of picking like one location. So it's interesting. I've gotten some interesting feedback, but it's like so funny you brought that up because we're discussing that with my crew with the alpha and then the beta readers that I'm about to release too. But yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that because we were just debating that in terms of world building. I was like, I'm gonna go for it, and if it falls flat, we'll just pull it back from the alpha and beta, and then go from there.
Sounds like you're gonna have to travel a lot so you can have those cities down pat. So,
Oh yeah, I am like totally okay with that. Like it's so funny because like Kevin Hearn wrote about Tempe, Arizona, and I lived in like right outside Phoenix in Glendale, and it was so cool because I was like I actually like went to like a bookstore there, like a Barnes and Noble or whatever, and I didn't have TV at the time and internet. We had just moved. I was really poor, so I was like I'm gonna go buy a $5 book. I think my mom got me like a gift card or something. So she's like, "Oh, buy yourself a book." So I went and bought like I think the first two of the Iron Druid Chronicles, but it was so cool because I didn't know that they took place in Arizona, like outside of Phoenix. And I literally read like the first seven were there while I was like there, and like two released. And it was so cool to like most of the books happen around that area. So my wife and I like passed the high school on a date, right? That they like fight a monster at and stuff. So it's just like it's super cool. So yeah, that's like I'm like always going back and forth, but I love the supernatural aspect where they were just traveling and fighting. I have a reason for it for the character, but yeah, it's really fun. I think like with Harry Dresden in Chicago, we went for our honeymoon a couple years ago before my son was born. It was so much fun, but it's funny right now. I'm deeper in the books and. It'll be like, oh, this place. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'll look it up. I'm like, these are in my pictures or something. So it is a fun aspect, I think, about urban fantasy. But yeah, that's a great way, I think, to get around it because it's also oh the Jane Yellow Rock series. Like she doesn't stay at one place; she travels too. So kind of like that aspect. So I think it's cool. But it is interesting, right, to see what different people do with the world building and why, right? Because I think that's where if everybody does the same thing all the time, right, it just gets really boring. So I love that you guys said that you kind of do something different for each one. I think that's super cool. So, what is the one thing you are the most proud of when it comes to these books?
Out of all your questions, that one is probably one of the hardest ones. We
No, I'm so sorry.
that one.
I've gotten so many great answers recently, though. I gotta keep asking it. So,
No, it's quite all right. I can't put into words what it felt like the first time I held my first book in print in my hands. I never had children. I've only had pets. And, I didn't make the pet, I just adopted them. But I actually made the book. I wrote the book. I got the book edited. I've typed it 100 times, envisioned it, re-envisioned it, reviewed and re-reviewed, and then formatted. And then I screwed up the printing the first time. But when I held it in my hands the first time, it became real. And it was a very moving moment. It far surpassed the concept of a sense of accomplishment, far beat that. And I knew I was entering a very small percentage of people that wanted to write a book, who sat down to do it, who completed it, who took it to fruition, actually published it. And this year we semi-retired to Costa Rica to write full time. So our day is composed of it, whatever it takes to get our work seen. So that day I held my first book in my hands. It was born, and now we've been rearing it, and I feel like we're going off to college now, and it's terrifying. So I'm most proud of how far I've come and how far my writing has come.
That's cool.
And I think we already touched on what I'm proud of is taking a game and making it make sense in a book. I mean,
It's no small feat.
It's no small feat. It was very challenging. So, and it is fast paced. It does read like a D&D adventure, but
it's not lit RPG though.
It's not lit RPG.
We have to be very specific about that now, because somebody recently
very offended.
I got my first piece of, I wouldn't call it hate mail, I'd call it critique mail, where someone said, this is not lit RPG. Nowhere in your book do you tell me how many pluses this sword has, and no character ever looks through the fourth wall kind of thing. They're like, this is a fantasy book. Stop calling it lit RPG. So
right.
I was like, well, it's not lit RPG, but it's inspired by a game. So
yeah. It's so funny because I had another author who wrote I always call him like D&D adventure, like dark fantasies or whatever. So he's doing something similar, and just like released a couple, and it was so funny because he was like, yeah, somebody on Amazon accidentally classified him as lit RPG for a little while. And he's like, nope. So finally, after like 3 months, I think they took it down. But he had a lot of hate mail and bad reviews and stuff. He's like, at least I got reviews, I guess. But yeah, it's got, because sometimes they're like, oh, what you might want to read next or whatever. I think some people might be like, oh yeah, this looks like this, genre or subgenre, and then they don't actually read the blurb or even do any homework or whatsoever. And I think that's where I've just noticed quite a bit. And I've had RPG people on here too who have said the same thing about people. They're like, why are there stats? I just want like dark fantasy, or I want, like your guys' books, right? They're like, I don't want this. I'm like, I don't know. Like Amazon apparently is to spend more on their algorithm or something like that.
And for the record, I love the genre as a
yeah.
It's one of the genres I love reading. It's just not what I'm writing.
Yeah.
I don't want to give away those secrets either.
Well, I had somebody so I have a Marine. My Monster Hunter is an ex-Marine, but it only takes really only really is applicable to my first prequel novella, where you find out it's a trilogy, and you find out how the process and like how the story happened from him being plucked out of this life that he loved with people that he loved, and then how he got thrust into this battle basically between like good and evil, and trying to figure out if he is fighting good and evil or if he's just fighting people and things. But it's interesting, right? It's like, but people were like, oh, it's military fantasy. I'm like, no, it's not. So actually I'm changing my cover for my first one, because too many like beta readers and alpha readers were like, oh, it's military fantasy. And I've taken polls and stuff. So I'm actually going to get something. I think I'm kind of contacting my blur and kind of go from there to try and tone. I want to get the military in there, right? Because he's a veteran, but I don't want people to think it's a military fantasy, because I know I'm going to get that hate mail, right? Because that's not what it is like in the long run. So I totally understand that. Not that I love military fantasy too. Like, it's great, right? I read a lot of books and stuff, talk to a lot of veterans and family members and stuff, but it's not what I write. So I totally get that. Now, if you guys could visit any setting or realm in fantasy or sci-fi, which would it be and why?
Am I allowed to pick mine?
Yeah, that's any.
Yeah, I would totally pick mine, and I'd be a farmer in some corner of the world. where it's safe.
Okay, that's a good one.
Because I know where all the bodies are buried. So
Yeah. Just don't make it a desert part of the planet, right? Like Luke and his family, right? How about for you, April?
So I
You be a
really,
farmer too, or
well, I'm not going to Cancer without him because he does know where all the bodies are buried. So,
that's fair. That's fair.
I really love Terry Brooks'
Mm.
Wizard at Large series. I think Landover would be a really fun place
Oh,
to
that's a
be.
great answer.
Yeah.
Nobody has said that, and like me basically asking this in like almost like 4 seasons now at different times. So
I'd take
that's a-
Discworld.
Yeah, you would take Discworld. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
I gotta get back to that. The Color of Magic was so flipping good. I read that when my second grad school, and it just like it got me through like the beginning of because I had a master's. I had then here they're like, oh, to teach you have to like do the internships. I had to like redo part of it, and that was like the book. I had to do it over a summer to like start it. It was very difficult. So that like really that book really got me through. Just like you know, it's just like getting me more into fantasy in a different way. It made me think differently. I don't know. I was just thinking about reflecting about the other day. It just like I read it at the right time, if that makes sense. And
It
it
does.
really like Terry like kept me going at that point. Yeah, and I just like went and found some amazing books after that, including the rest of his. But yeah, that's super cool. Those are all great answers. Now. If you could meet, I just want to ask this one too, because I know we got just a little bit of time left. If you guys can meet one of your characters, which one would it be and why?
Mm.
I'd probably want to meet Pentacama.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome. Sounds like a cool person.
Thank you. That's flattering. He's was one of my favorite. My absolute favorite character though still hasn't made it into the books. Although there's in Lord of the Undead, the third Pentakawa book, there's a cameo appearance of his childhood self. The character's name is Jack Candlestick, and he becomes a very successful bard in the world of Kinther. He is a physical anomaly. He is a human being who is 7'11".
Jeez.
He is very tall. He's very gangly. He has bright red, coppery, curly hair down to his shoulders, freckles and green eyes, and he was a absolute misfit, but a successful bard. And in his later years, he gets noticed by the trickster god Nuntil and gets made into the official bard of Kinther, which is a champion position, but it requires him to literally go around to where all the world important events are to record them for posterity. The plus side to that is lots of travel. The downside of that is lots of danger. But he finds himself accidentally becoming part of history along the way. And I haven't finished the concept for the character, but he wanted to tell stories, and then somewhere along the way, he wanted to be part of the story. He grew envious of the characters, and he wanted to become part of history and part of the story. But that made him look a little more arrogant, of course. So every time I've seen a bard in TV, movies, and books, I've always been like, what aspect of that is similar to the one I imagine?
Oh,
Do you remember Xena and Hercules back in the day? Was it Jockster the Mighty? He he was his own PR agent. He looked ridiculous.
Yeah.
Sam Raimi, and then recently with the Witcher series, Jasper,
No.
not Jasper. Shoot, I'm drawing a blank now because I started talking about Mordor. But he wrote the song, "Toss a Coin to Your Witcher," and now his name is escaping me. But yeah, so I would like to meet him and ask how he's doing because I feel like he's had a lot of weight on his shoulders.
That's really cool. Well, that's both are really, really good answers. So I think that's awesome. It gives us a little bit more glimpse into your world building characters and mindset for that. So it's really cool. So we're wrapping up here. Do you guys have any other news, updates, or current projects that you can share with us?
Jasper? Okay.
Thank you. It's gonna bug me. I was gonna have to look it up after we get done.
Okay, news, updates, and current projects. The biggest news is that the third book for the Knights of Aragon series, Quest of a Goddess, has been sent off to the editor. and we're less than 2 months away from going to print.
Oh, awesome.
The second book in the series just recently had its audiobook come out. The second book is Demons, Dragons, and Demigod. It was delayed because we had to find a new narrator, but that's out and presently available on Amazon, Audible, and I think Apple iTunes.
Yeah, and even Carly Larson, she's also an avid D&D player, so she really enjoyed the project. We've really enjoyed working with her.
Yeah, call it keeping it in the family.
Keeping it in the family.
That's awesome.
So that's the biggest news. Updates. We're writing. She's making more exploration into the romantasy genre. She did a few short stories involving Elwyn and one of those little side quests. It was basically a love affair with a dragon.
Yep, Dragon Shifter.
So that's a collection of a few short stories floating out there, which is inspiring her to write a romantasy series next. So that's under development, work in progress to be announced. And in the first book, The Dark Gift by Pentakawa, that was the first book. 5 characters walked onto the screen I was not expecting. This was one of those pantser moments where they just sort of like eked onto stage. And they were so interesting that when I got finished with the second book in Pentakawa series, I was suddenly sidetracked having to write their origin story. And that damn dragon, because that's what they kept talking about, is I could have been home studying wizardry, but no, I had to go see about that damn dragon. Oh, I could have been, chief of my tribe as a barbarian, but no, I had to go see about that damn dragon. So I had to write their origin story. So I'm returning to them to finish out their tales. And I'll probably return back to Pentakawa and his adventures. Current projects, that covers that. We've expanded our social media presence. You can find us at kinther.com, KINTHUR.com, where we have all of our social links. We're out there on YouTube and Blue Sky and TikTok and Facebook and all that. And then we've recently started a Patreon. So you can look for Kinther Chronicles, which is, the story of Kinther Chronicles at Patreon. And on that, if you're a paid member, you can get all of our short stories a month ahead of time. We'll put short stories out there before they go to print. So if you're a subscriber, you'll get to see all of those works in progress and experimental short story expressions and the graphic cover art as it's developed from conception to finished product. So you get to see all of that, and then blog posts and such that are posted on the website are duplicated on Patreon. And as always, if you're a fan of fantasy and you read something and you like it, please leave a review, let others know. Word of mouth is literally how a self-published author succeeds.
Absolutely. And and drop us a line, send us a
email.
Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, what made you cry, what ruined your day, whatever. So
I definitely messaged R.A. Salvatore when I was starting to get caught up with the Dritz books at that point. Now it's been like, I think 4 or 5 years again. But yeah, it was like, you made me cry twice ever for any book. I was like, when you did it back to back books, I was like, you jerk. And he just like, so yeah.
Sign up.
Yeah.
Let's come back for more though.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment. Well, I want to thank you both so much for coming on, and just to segue back to reviews. So everybody, just make sure we're constantly talking about authors, artists, editors, audio narrators, other creatives. Everybody is involved with the process, right? Artists, those kind of things. So anytime that you're reviewing a product, even if it is a book, right, it's actually helping everybody in the process. So we're going to continue to make that our theme. So please make sure you do that. Just want to remind everybody that you can find their links in the description anywhere where you're watching or listening. Please subscribe, because we're so close to 1,000 on YouTube. And once we get through the algorithm ceiling, and then everybody sees all of my authors and creatives that we've had on here even more, which has always been my goal. So please, audience, help us out there and share with people. Thank you so much. Well, thank you both so much for coming on. Love to have you on in the future. I always save room for veterans of the podcast if they alum, if you want, if you will. Anybody who's been on, they always get first dibs on coming back for another season. I never have a problem too of doing like bonus episodes, or I always just kind of do 52 for myself, but we can always do 55 or 70 if we really needed to. So feel free to send me anything you have for this interview, but in the future too, we do have a podcast group on Facebook. It's getting near 3,000. I have some absolutely amazing people there that share everything. Thank you, Paul, Alan, Ingrid, and a bunch of others, Ryan, Knoll. So they're just making that group really, really, really successful for me. And it's nice not having to do very much now because other people are helping. But yeah, send me anything you have and we will get it out there. I'll send you that invite link if you guys want to join that. Feel free. But other than that, this has been great. I really appreciate you guys' time. And if there's anything else I can do in the meantime, you two just let me know, okay?
Thank you for having us.
Yes,
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, you two have a great rest of the day. I'll email you, like I said, later this weekend, and we'll get everything else all set for you. But other than that, hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and I'll talk to you guys soon, okay?
Perfect, thanks.
Bye.
Thanks. See ya.